Before trying to get your staff re-engaged, take a step back and evaluate the situation. There could be many things that are causing them to become disengaged. Today, we're going to go over 8 different issues and how you can address them, saving yourself time, energy, and frustration. So our first issue is staff are not talking. So how do you get them talking?
So what we're going to look at is, what is the setting? A lot of staff are not public people. They don't want to have the conversation in the public. So how do you set up? What is the right setting? Looking for a private setting. If you want to have a conversation with someone, take it into a private location. Don't be confronting them in the coffee room or at the water cooler. Book a boardroom, and that way you don't have to worry about interruptions. You can have that conversation. A lot of people are emotional people, so they might cry, they might get upset, they might go silent. This will offer them the opportunity to not be exposed to the public.
Yeah, when you're in that situation and you've set up the setting, remember that there's 2 different perspectives. Yeah. So they might not be talking for a multitude of reasons. Check in with them, ask those open-ended questions, and don't just give them your feedback as to what you're seeing, but ask them for their input. What are they seeing? How are they feeling? What would make them more comfortable to speak up? Remember that it's a dialogue. It's not just about you going in there and telling them how they need to start engaging.
Now, this is what the truth is.
Really?
Here's my truth. Take it. Really.
Just make sure that you're pulling that information out of them and not just giving them the information.
Exactly. Sometimes we go into a conversation just to confirm what we know is to be true.
Yeah.
We're not looking for the other person's perspective. So if you go into it and then you ask them first, so tell me what you thought of the meeting the other day, you'll get their perspective. Mm-hmm. And they might say, it was the best meeting I ever attended. And here you're thinking, wow, that had to be the worst meeting we've had in a long time. But if you tell them, well, I thought that was the worst meeting we've had in a long time, and then say, oh, and by the way, Crystal, what did you think of it? Well, she's sure not going to come back and say, oh, I thought it was the best meeting we had. So ask their perspective. That way you've opened it up and you've not pre-led the conversation in the direction that you want it to go.
Yeah, and you have to definitely watch their body language here. If you're giving them information and you're finding that they're shutting down, stop yourself. I know it's hard because you want to get a thought out, but stop yourself and ask, hey, I noticed that you changed. I noticed that you sat back, you crossed your arms. What's going on? Because something changed after I made that comment.
And if you start to hear, it was a nice flowing dialogue, and all of a sudden you hear, fine, okay, yep. Well, a lot of men will today say when they hear the word fine, that sends up signals for them. Fine is not fine. We use it in a term, but fine may not always be fine. So if you were having a good flowing conversation, and now that conversation's turned into one-word answers, even though you've asked open-ended questions, just check in with the person. Did something just happen that shut down this conversation?
Yeah, and that gets into our next point, which is identifying those roadblocks. Sometimes there's roadblocks that make people not want to engage in the conversation.
So some of the roadblocks can be depending on the personality type. If a person is caught off guard when a topic is brought up, they may then turn around and say, well, now I didn't even have time to prepare. I don't even remember what you're talking about. They may be trying to remember the event, remember what happened around it. And sometimes we go into that fight, flight, and freeze mode, where as soon as the topic's brought up, when we realize there possibly could be a conflict happening here, we might go into freeze mode and then we can't even think. Our brains are flooding with all kinds of thoughts as to what happened, trying to remember the situation. So if the individual that you're having a conversation with, if you're hunching that they are on the introvert style, or they've just outright said to you, you know what, I need to have some time to think about this, reflect on it, and then come back and have another conversation, truly be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give them the time and the space, because that's what they need. If you want them to engage, you're going to have to meet them halfway and give them the time so that they're comfortable engaging with you.
So motivating employees. What's the big deal about motivating employees?
How does it engage them within your workplace?
So motivated employees are beneficial. How are they beneficial? It's a lot more pleasant to have happy working employees in the workplace. The sick time is less. They're more geared to do better, learn more, figure out a problem, rather than if a problem comes up, they'll just be like, wow, that's not my issue. That's not my task. So I don't have to take care of that.
Yeah, a motivated employee is an engaged employee. And don't think that all of this is necessarily about you. These are about motivating people from the inside out. So this isn't something that's going to cost you thousands of dollars to get someone motivated. So make sure that you stay watching. Don't go away. This isn't going to be an extremely expensive tip for you.
So motivated employee too, people's motivation changes throughout their career.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start at 19 years old in your first career and end up 35, 40 years old and have the same motivators. So just know motivations change. Keep those conversations going with your employees.
Well, at least typically they're not the same. There's guaranteed one of you is going to say my motivation is the same. So to you, okay, but for the majority of people, it typically changes. We want to encourage you to have the conversation.
So some of the conversations can involve just sitting down and asking the employees different questions. Some of the questions could be, if you could do any job within this organization, what job would you like to do? And then if there's any possible way that you could initiate a conversation between the employee and that person, try to do it. Can you imagine if the employee says, well, one day I want to be the president of the company. And so one day when you're out talking and you see the president, you say, hey, would you mind just having a coffee with this employee? And then you go back to the employee, hey, talk to the president. Like to see you up in his office. Can you imagine what that employee would think?
Yeah, and this really gets into what is important to the person. So not only what's important to them within work, but also what do they enjoy doing outside work? Because a lot of times people have these hidden talents and skills, and you don't know about them if you don't ask. I can't even believe when you sit down and go for coffee with some people, the things that you hear that they're actually into, and you go, wow, that's a whole nother demographic of people. Yeah, that's a whole nother demographic of people that we could bring into our business. Like, what a different way to approach things if you knew that they had all of these hobbies on the side. Some projects that you then have will fit much better with this person. Or if you need people to go out and talk to clients and you have a client that has similar hobbies or interests that you know about, you can send that person because they're instantly going to have a better connection than someone that is way out in left field but just knows the product.
And if you've got people that are motivated by, sort of life goals or life purposes, that they've always wanted to work with women, they always want to work with children, they always wanted to work with a certain demographic or within a culture. So then when you get the projects that come across your desk and you see, hey, just talked to Jane last week, this is right up her alley. This is something she said is a passion of hers. Guess what? I now know I'm going to put Jane on this project.
Yeah, and look at the things that they're proud of as well. So if they're super proud of an award that they've received in the past from an old firm that they worked with or from the university that they attended, find out what that is, what makes them proud. Because if you are able to highlight that, if you're able to grab a hold of what makes them proud, you already know what's intrinsically motivating them. Those extrinsic motivations only last so long. They're very fleeting. So these are where people go in for their raises or the company bonuses or the trips. And that's all that stuff that you give to them that's extrinsic, which it serves a place and there is a time for it. And there are some people that are motivated by that, but without having that fire inside, without really being able to internally want to be there, things are good until they're not good. And as soon as things go bad, you're not going to know what to do because that person's going to be signed out of their job by that point. And if you can't give them that bonus, do you really want them just sitting back in the meetings ignoring you because now they know that that's off the table? I don't think so. That's why you need to find out what is an intrinsic motivation for your staff in order to serve them best and to get them re-engaged or engaged even more within your company.
And what personality traits are they most proud of? So if you say to them, if you passed away tomorrow, what would you like somebody to say at your funeral that's a characteristic about you? What are you most proud of that? And then how do you foster that in the workplace? So a highly motivated employee is a healthy, happy, they're not spending their days on the internet looking for another job, and the sick time isn't, just something that, today I don't feel like going to work, I'm just going to call in sick.
So our third way that you can engage staff is by finding what their passion and their drive is.
So by looking at passion and drive of employees, a lot of it comes from what are their core values. Is their core values about helping people? Is it about saving the environment? What's truly at the center that employee values the most?
Yeah, what impact do they want to have as a human being? If they are able to align what their passion is, what the impact that they are going to have is to their job, they're going to be far more effective because they're working towards the big game, the big goal. They're not just here for today. They're here for tomorrow. They're here for the future.
And they want to make a difference in the world. They want to leave this world with some stamp on it to say, Jeanette and Crystal, we're here. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're all here to say is we want to be remembered when we go. So how are we going to be remembered?
Yeah, what's their why? I know that's something that's been said in business a lot is find out what people's why is. This is about their passion. Why do you want to wake up every day? Maybe not what's making you wake up right now, but if you could have it, why would you wake up in the morning? What would be the purpose? Now, I know that these are really big questions to be asking your staff, so we're not expecting them to just come out on the fly and say, "Oh, I know my whole purpose in life." But sit down and have the conversation, and the more that you have these conversations with your staff, the more they'll start thinking that way. So this isn't just, hey, go in and ask all of these 8 dynamics or hit these 8 things right out of the gate. Go in with a few questions in order to ask and seek out that information from them.
And depending on their relationship is going to be the comfort level of how much they're going to give you an answer. But the more that you show a genuine concern for their answers, that you're not just asking, it's like that age-old question, how are you doing today? And everybody's like, fine, but nobody really is paying attention to it. If you actually show the staff that when you ask the question, you're interested in what their answer is, and you're like, wow, that really makes sense. Tell me more about that. You'll notice that the staff will start sharing more and more because they really do feel you have an interest and you're not just checking a box.
And a way to find out their passion is not just by asking, hey, how are you doing today? But
what's your passion today?
Yeah. I mean, ask, hey, what did you get up to this weekend? Like, throw a curveball to them. Ask them something that you've never asked them before to make them go like, oh, wait, they actually want to know what's going on with me. Because just by saying like, hey, what did you get up to this weekend? Yeah. Oh, I went hiking. Oh, I didn't know that you enjoyed hiking. Oh, I went and played with my kids. Oh, I didn't know you had kids.
Yeah. Where did you go hiking?
Yeah, ask these questions. Oh, how long have you been hiking for? Oh, tell me more about it. What are your favorite spots? This is how we get to know people and build relationships. Without relationships, people will sign off. So by building those relationships, by really digging deep into those passions, I mean, you don't have to get to the philosophical level here, but enough that you can get to know them as a person as opposed to just somebody that you work with, just a coworker. So take that extra time and put in the energy.
So why is it important? What will knowing your staff or your coworker, your teammates' passions is so that when you're looking to engage them, when you see that their motivation seems to be down, that you really can attach what drives their passion and who they are as a person in incorporating that into the workplace.
Yeah, and when you know what somebody's passion is and you have a question that might be related, all of a sudden they get to be the expert in the room.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love all of a sudden feeling like they have a lot of value to bring to the company and people want to know their perspective? So by finding out those passions, you all of a sudden make them an expert in that area. So that will most definitely get your staff engaged. We're going to move into some of those more difficult staff. So now that you have them motivated, just before we get into those trickier people, take a minute to like and hit the notification button and subscribe to our channel. If you're looking for some tools to start some of those conversations or get some different conversations with staff, we have some links in the description below, and we're going to move on to our next topic here.
So now we're going to look at the resistance to change.
Yeah, so those people that are not engaging because they do not want to be a part of whatever change you are throwing out.
And we all know some of them.
So within that, there's always the people that are resistant, and then there are the ones that we're going to call your cheerleaders. Those are the ones that are like, yeah, sign me up, I'm on board, this is the most fantastic things ever. Utilize those people. If you can create an army of cheerleaders or even another person, it's like cloning yourself. So instead of you putting out 100% of the effort to try to get those resistant people on board, keep the energy up with those cheerleaders, encourage them, make sure that they have the correct messaging because sometimes they get all excited, but they don't have the information and they run off and sell your product, which isn't your product. So make sure that you rally up those cheerleaders, get the correct information to them, and then send them forth to start gathering the people. The people that they're most easily going to be able to gather are those fence sitters. Those are the people that are waffling back and forth. You know, they've been there a while, so they've been through this before. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Yeah, management has done this before, so I'll just wait this one out. Yeah.
We'll wait.
Get the cheerleaders to go and gather those people and sell them on the idea. This is going to be so fantastic for you for all of these reasons. Isn't this going to make your life easier? Use your cheerleaders to do that, because one-on-one meetings or addressing every single person individually is going to really slow down the process. So grab those cheerleaders and get those fence sitters off the fence by utilizing those cheerleaders and drawing out those questions as to why they are resistant to change. So if those fence sitters are saying, no, I'm not coming aboard because I've seen this happen before. What have you seen happen before? What are some of the issues that came up? Are there things that should have been addressed? Let me know. I want your expertise. Give me your knowledge. This is where you will draw them in, because by answering their questions, they're going to then jump on your team.
And then we've got the others who are in complete opposition. Mm-hmm. They've seen too many changes. They are resistant to change. They don't want to change. They see no purpose for change. They can't be bothered with the change. So what do you do with those individuals? Well, you have to first find out what it is about this change that they're in opposition for. Yeah, usually there's a pretty big reason. People aren't trying to be difficult, typically, just for the sake of being difficult. There is a reason. And sometimes the reason can just be they're at the end of their career. Mm-hmm. They just don't want to learn the new software program, change computers, change how they do work. They could just have seen so many changes. They're just at that point. There's other individuals that change makes a whole different dynamic. They then go from a competent employee and then have the fear that they'll become incompetent. Yeah, or even risk their job, right? Yeah. If the change is big enough, it could be a matter of, hey, my livelihood's at stake here, and, I don't really trust you. So how often have you heard corporations say that? That's okay. This change is good for everyone. Nobody will be laid off right now. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they say, oh, reorg, guess what? Half the staff are gone. So there is an underlying fear with every change that's being made within a corporation.
Mhm.
And some people weather that fear better. Other people, it comes right out. You'll start to see more aggression. You'll start to see people say, then that's it, I'm just not going to do this anymore. So finding out what is it that's holding these people back, it could be a simple change that you can do. There's a fear that they're going to lose their job. Okay, how can you guarantee for the next 2 years till this guy retires that he will have a job? Or the fear that they're not going to have the time to train because there's all of a sudden going to be a backlog in the work. Okay, you've already done a risk of that, and you've got extra staff coming on to allow them the time to change. Find out what it is that's holding them back.
Now, if you've removed all of those roadblocks and people are still just resistant and they're not willing to talk, sometimes it's time to move on. And though that person may maintain their employment, you're just going to have to move on with the other 80, 90, 95, 99.9% of the people.
Yeah.
And either they're going to get hit with peer pressure that everyone else is loving this change. And I don't know what's going on with you, ma'am, but we are loving it. So you can get on board or whatever. We just have to ignore you and keep going on.
And a lot of times they'll eventually catch up to the group.
For some people, then they'll finally jump on board. Peer pressure. For other people, they'll say, okay, this just isn't for me anymore. And that's just life. Sometimes it's just not the right fit for some people, and companies need to grow and expand and change. And for some people, it's just too much, and they need to go and find whatever their next step is. Now, you don't have to be the one kicking them out the door, but you can be the one that says,
Help them transition.
What else can we find for you here? And I'll give you a great recommendation, but we need this change to go through, and sorry, we're not going back.
So let's talk about introvert staff and extrovert staff. What is the difference between an introvert and an extrovert? Sometimes it's pretty hard to get a read as to who's an introvert and extrovert, because a lot of times you'll actually be an introvert, but you have to work in an extrovert world. So you have to work outside of your comfort area. Essentially, in a very quick note, if you wanted to try to determine when it comes time to re-energize, do you feel like calling up some friends and going out and getting together, and that's how you'll re-energize? Or does it seem like a dream to go home, have a bath, grab a good book, and just sit down and read the book by yourself? There you can take it. The book people, more the introverts. Getting together in a social aspect is the extroverts. Of course, there's a spectrum, so everybody falls on that spectrum someplace. But if you think about some of your friends and coworkers, you can probably place who's on the extreme extrovert and who would be on the extreme introvert.
So for these people, we're going to talk today about the introverts that are really not engaging within the workplace. Because the ones that are engaged, we're not worrying about here. The ones that are not speaking up in meetings, the ones that are more lax about worrying about their job and just seem like you don't know if they really want to be there, those are the introverts that we are going to try to get on board.
Yeah. So how do you engage these introverts? Well, one of the best ways is to offer them an invitation to have a conversation with you. If you're in a meeting and you've noticed that, out of the 10 people, 7 people constantly add their feedback, and you might have 3 that really don't jump into the conversation or offer it, pretty much guess those are going to be some of your introverts. Well, take the time and go around the table. And once the extroverts or the extroverts/introverts have had their say,
the more vocal people, we'll call them.
Go to the people that are not speaking up and just say, hey, so-and-so, what would you like to say? Do you have something you'd like to put in? Invite them into the conversation.
And if they're still not speaking up, go in with specific questions. Hey, June, I know that you've done this before. Can you speak to what advice you'd have for us doing this? By actually asking them questions as opposed to just giving them something in the universe to ponder about, they'll be more likely to speak up. If someone just says, what are your thoughts? That's a very general question. Or do you have any feedback? Well, what person that is a true introvert and acting as an introvert is going to say, oh, let me tell you all the things that I think about you?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, or it's very rarely going to happen unless they have super strong feelings about it. So ask them more specific questions, and you can do some of the pre-work on this ahead of time. Go in with questions and get to know your staff so you know their area of expertise.
And if you've just proposed a new idea to the team, and this person has added this piece in, this person, and there's lots of ideas flowing, and then you go to that one individual, you say, so what are your thoughts on it? Their mind is still putting all the pieces together. They analyze what people say, and then they try to formulate something from it. So you may not get the answer at that meeting. Just invite them to give their feedback even after the meeting.
Yeah, tell them, here's an email or give me a call, and we'll keep the agenda open for feedback for X duration. That way they can go back and really think about what feedback they do want to give, but still put a time limit on it. So saying you have until infinity to tell me, they might just not take it. Give them, okay, I'm going to keep this open for 24 hours. If you have feedback before we move on, please let me know.
And if you've got an introvert that's just not contributing, have a private meeting with them. Don't call them out in a public setting. Have a private meeting. Tell them how important it is that you do hear their opinions, their concerns, that you value their opinions and thoughts, and that you would really like their input on different topics that you're having. So letting them know that, and then just say, what is it that I could do to help engage you, whether it's in the meeting or whether it's after the meeting, and go with that.
There's some fantastic books regarding trying to get people's energy back and trying to engage those introverts. Check them out in our description below. And it will take you to where you are able to purchase these and get some more information. All right, we are going to roll in to some of our last topics here.
So looking at the untapped potential of your staff, what are some aspects that you can do to bring that potential to a higher level? So some staff, you'll be able to tell that, just by knowing them, that they can work at a higher level. And it just seems to be that level is decreasing and decreasing.
Yeah, those employees that, they're there and they're working hard, but they're only somewhat engaged. And it's because they could be doing better. They could be working harder. They have more to give, but they're not giving it. But you really can't just come out and say, hey, you're not performing, because they are performing. They're meeting all of your metrics. So how do you get those staff that are still doing their job, but that they are not harnessing or utilizing their potential?
Yeah. So bringing awareness to it is the first part of it. How did you recognize it? And do they recognize it within themselves? And then having that conversation with them as to, is there something that you can do? Have they noticed it within themselves? Is it something related to the workplace? Is it something related to their personal life? We have to be cautious that with all that goes on in everybody's world, we can't take it that it's all workplace related, that if their potential is dropped or they don't seem as engaged, that it's just about something that happened within the workplace.
And it might be something that you can then remove the roadblocks. Yeah. So if that person really doesn't view themselves as being able to move up in the company for whatever reason, and you might see, wow, this person would be such a great fit for this job that's coming up. How do you unleash that potential? Is there training that they need? Is there mentorship that they need? You being in a different position from them are going to see things very differently than they see looking from the inside out. They might just see all of the barriers, whereas you can see the opportunities. You can see how to overcome all of this and help them out.
So having the conversation with the employee, knowing what you know corporate-wise, or finding out, is there something that is within your power, your sphere of influence, to help bring that potential back up to the top level? Do they see themselves rising up in the corporation, as Crystal was saying? That's something that we can take a look at as managers, and then see if there's an opportunity we can provide.
Yeah, and if they're not interested in moving up, because some people really aren't, they like something about their job. Is there something else that they can work towards? Is there a training program that they can do? Is there a team that they want to be on? What else could they work towards within that? Because that's actually going to get them up and make them eager to come in. And though your vision might not be realized for them, they might then actually be able to start dreaming a little bigger than they have before.
And when they see their value within the corporation, that report that they do every month isn't just being slid into somebody's bottom drawer, that they're actually using this report that they contribute to make the decisions as to which buyers do we go to, which customers do we go after. Sometimes just seeing that they actually add value, what they do in the end of the day adds value to the corporation, that sometimes increases that level of potential and engagement.
Yeah, so tap into that potential in order to get their buy-in back into the company, back into your vision. So our 7th issue is these apathetic employees. These are the ones that could really care less where they work. They're just there. They're just doing their thing. They're getting their paycheck.
They show up.
Yeah, they show up. They're on time enough. So what's your issue? With these people, you need to lead by example, because these are the people that are going to call you out on it. If you act like you don't want to be in a meeting, they don't want to be there in the meeting either. If you don't want to be on the phone call and you're passing projects on to them, they're going to pass these projects on to someone else. So you need to step up your game.
Yeah.
You need to lead by example. You need to not necessarily get in their face, but be there, showing them, leading them, getting them, pulling them with your energy back into the game.
If you're disengaged and you're holding a MS Teams meeting, Zoom meeting, any type of electronic meeting, and you're checking your BlackBerry and you're walking the dog over here, and you keep telling the staff that they have to be engaged.
Video off.
Yeah. They're all going to catch on, and sooner or later you're going to have all black screens, and everybody is just going to be online because they have to be, but not fully engaged.
Yeah, these are the people that, like we were talking about before, these are the ones that you utilize those passions, right? You need to go in and actually get to know them and find out why they are there, and if they want to be there, then you're able to start putting in some of these other skills.
So you have to draw out what your own passion is, what's important to you, what do you feel gives you value in your job? Because the employees will definitely see that. If they see someone who really is just there for the paycheck and disengaged and everything else, they won't find purpose either. So making sure that you find something that gives you that bit of passion, if you're not fully passionate about it, but just gives you something to be passionate about, and bring out their passion. So part of your role as their supervisor, team lead, co-worker is to help them even identify what brings them to work and what motivates them, what's their passion.
A lot of these people really feel like they're just another employee, they're just another number, they're a body in the room. So what you need to do is find a way to make this person feel like an individual within the workplace, and why they're there and what value they actually bring. That, you hired them for a reason, and if you want to keep them there, why it's important that they are the one that's there, not the guy next to them, not the other person that sent in their resume. Why that specific person do you want on your team? Only by actually making them feel like you need them and you want them, and they're not just filling a seat, are they going to buy in to stay there with you.
So also tie into their values. What do they value in life? Do they value being on time? Do they value paying their bills every month? Do they value contributing to something that's going to save the world? Tie into what that value is. Help them see that they've got a place here, that they are valued as an employee, and that it does tie into what they do value in life.
Before we move on to our last issue, let us know in the comments below what type of person or people do you have the most issue working with? What type of people do you find are the most difficult to have to work with every day? We'd love to bring you some more videos on how to work with those people. For our last issue here, we're going to cover those employees that want to quit. So those ones that, it's not a secret. It's a very open secret around the hallway. Joe's looking for another job. Joe's been looking for a year. So you're always waiting to see when's Joe finally going to quit. What do you do with these people? How do you re-engage them?
Yeah. So what are some of the leadership issues around knowing that you've got employees who want to quit? Is it that you really want to retain this employee? Is it an employee that you know no matter what you do, they're going to go anyway? Is it an employee that has great value and it's going to be really hard to replace them? Do you know why they've made that choice to leave?
Yeah, a lot of times people want to leave because of leadership. Now, if it's only one employee that wants to leave, it could be different. But if you have an entire team of people, especially when it's not necessarily your direct people, but you've noticed that in another department, lots and lots of people are coming and going, and it's a revolving door. Yeah, it's the revolving door. What's going on? Chances are it's the leadership. So why? What could be going on with the leadership within that team, the management within that team, or the team dynamic? A lot of times it's that people just really don't care, and so they're not taking care of their employees.
People say they don't quit a job, they quit the leadership. So if they find that they're not being respected or valued by the leadership, and that looks different for every employee. There could be one employee who turns around and says, no, I feel fully respected here. And another employee says, nope, I feel completely disrespected. My opinion's never heard. You've got to dig deeper to find out really why are they not feeling like they're being heard.
Yeah, sometimes this even comes into having the autonomy. So this is where the proverbial micromanager comes in, and they just don't quite know how to step back and let people sink and swim, let people learn, and allow their team to thrive. Instead, they're very nitpicky and they stand over top of people, either via email or actually physically over them. So micromanagers don't always have to be face-to-face micromanagers, but if every single little thing that you're expecting someone to do, you're getting an email and a constant follow-up, and you haven't even come close to the deadline, or it's personal preference things, not actually quality things, this can really start grating on people's nerves. So that could be another reason that people are constantly quitting or looking for other jobs.
For sure. And recognition. So when they do accomplish something, when they have given the extra hand, when they've met the deadline, when they've reached the budget, when a project ends, how do you acknowledge that employee? Do you take the credit? Do you go get the director's award? Do you receive all the accolades? Mm-hmm. Or do you actually share it out with your team and say, hey, this wasn't just me. This was our whole team effort. We all contributed to it. I want to bring Anne up and George up. I want us all to receive this because it wasn't just me that did it. For people to actually be acknowledged for the work that they did or their contribution, that's going to also show them that this is a company that really values their employees.
As well, the communication. A lot of times we find that people are quitting because there is such a lack of transparency and communication. Now, what that looks like within your organization can vary greatly, but if people feel like you're withholding information that they need to do their job effectively and meet those target objectives, they're going to quit because you're setting them up for failure. So going in and checking in and making sure that you are communicating, or that team is being communicated to in the most efficient way in order to help them do their jobs effectively.
And just know when employees ask you questions, don't take that as a challenge to your decision, that they're being insubordinate. Sometimes certain employees need different information than what you've conveyed to them to fill in those blanks so that they can do their job. to the best of their abilities.
And that's going to get them to re-engage. Having that
Yeah.
correct information is going to get them to engage because they'll actually know what they're doing.
Yes, exactly.
Having a sense of fulfillment as well. So taking it back from the leadership and putting it on them, being able to have something that is fulfilling within their job is going to make them want to stay there.
So, and then aligning it with their values. What is it that somebody values the most? Do they value being on time, meeting deadlines, bringing it in on budget, customer satisfaction, having the checks out to communities and suppliers and vendors on time? What is it that they attach their values? What's important to them? And then how do you make sure that you're able to achieve that?
Yeah, and that pulls into culture. Having a culture that works with that person and works within the way that they want to work, the way that they want to be greeted in the morning, the way that they want to be taking their breaks and their lunch hours, and what do they do in the off time? Is it a culture that people are going out and having a good time after work together, or do they value just being able to go home at the end of the night and not having any work on their plate? Look at what type of culture your organization has, and does that person fit into it? Or is there something that you might need to change because you do have a toxic culture?
So there can be different changes that we take a look at in life that are going to start taking a look at work-life balance and how does that play into that role? Is there flexibility in the schedule where they can work 7 to 3 so that, they can do some of the childcare, or they can minimize the childcare expenses, or one can take the kids to school, the other can pick them up? Are they later on in life where they really want to come in at 9 or 10, or they don't want to work a full day? What are some of the changes that happen in employees' lives where instead of just quitting completely, can we accommodate some of those changes to ride over what's happening at that time?
If you've enjoyed this video and want more information and details and examples about one of these elements, go and check out our staff engagement playlist. It's going to be linked below. Go look at it and you can get into exactly what you need more information on. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can get notified of our latest videos. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in our next video. It looks so light. It's hot.
We can do a fan. We can put a fan in here on us.
And then have Beyonce
Blowing our
here.
hair. Yeah.